Hello, friends. I am so very delighted to be welcoming Camelia Elias for the second time, for the second conversation onto my channel. And for those of you who missed the first conversation, it will be linked for you, of course, in the description of the video below. But I know that many of you have watched our first conversation, and of course, Camelia, she for most of us really in the community doesn't need any introduction, but I also do know that there are some new people always stopping by and finding Camelia's work and finding the interviews. So I thought I will kind of quickly introduce Camelia again. And you will, Camelia, you're very, very special to me because you are my first tarot teacher, but also I've been learning magic from you and Zen and through your books and through the multiple courses that I've done. So, and we will be talking about magic today as well. So we'll get to that as well, which is very exciting. And as you know, I invited you for the second time because I cannot get enough of you, of your teachings, of your wisdom, of everything. And today's conversation will be very exciting because we'll get to have a look at your special decks as well that many of us drew over when we see it on your Facebook page, on your Instagram. But it's a huge honor to welcome you again, and I'm just so excited to sit with you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Masha. I mean, you know what I think of your own work, So, but the work you put in here, I appreciate it greatly. I mean, I love an interview who prepares, you know. So it's nice that although you pretty much know everything there is to know as far as my own work is concerned, you somehow never cease to surprise me with your direct questions and like checking in with can we talk about this kind. And then I thought, okay, we're going to be sitting here until midnight again. So we'll have, I mean, that's what happened the last time, because I guess this part two here, the showcasing of some of my decks. We wanted to talk about those the last time and we didn't get around to doing it. So
Yeah.
let's see, how much talk about this stuff we can do today. But absolutely, you just throw things at me, and then yes, some of the people showing up here or listening to us, if they've been listening to me, then I have a tendency to just keep yakking and yakking. Who wants that? To listen to all that?
Well, I do. That's why you're here. That's why I
Yeah, that's
invite
what
you.
to say.
And that's why I like, questions because I always want to know more. And we have quite a lot of people. I'm not going to say hello to everyone, but hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And yeah,
Yeah.
also
So
Ian was here first.
hello
I'll just
from
highlight
you. Yes,
Ian.
I mean, I know I can't see anybody. This is not, we
Yeah.
are not in one of our Zoom classes, I mean, though, yes,
Mm.
Ian is here. Hi.
Yeah, so yeah,
Very
I've been
exciting.
talking to Ian a little bit on Instagram, so he was very excited when he saw Dax, mentioned. Yeah, but
Yeah.
before we get into the Dax, if you can just quickly share a little bit what's new and upcoming at Aredia Academy, like with the
Mm.
project, the courses, what you're working on, and then we'll get into
Oh,
those Dax that we didn't have time to cover last time.
oh, yes. Well, right now, like what's happening right now, as you know, Bent, my partner, and the teacher at Aradi Academy, he has taken over the teaching of the foundation courses
Mm.
that I've been running myself for a number of years. And because I always find other things to do, so I thought, okay, I can't keep doing this, but you're welcome. And he said I can run the foundation courses, and I said okay. So he made that offer, to do 21-week long, stretch where we cover the Marseille Tarot, the playing cards, and the Lenormand cards. Yeah. So although he capped the classes at 50, and now it is at its exact capacity, and the Marseille module is already almost, I wouldn't say not exactly halfway, but almost. So coming after, and there's going to be an announcement, there will be about 20 spots free for the Lenormand and the play. Oh,
Say
first, the
fun for
playing
me.
card module, yeah.
I
The
was
playing
learning
card
the playing
module,
cards.
and then Yeah, and then the Lenormand one.
He needs to save a spot for me because I'm so excited about the playing cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. So though, because some people didn't sign up for the full cycle, only about 30 people signed up for the full cycle. So which means that we have spots for the Lenormand and the playing card module. Yeah. But right now the class is at full capacity, so I can't accept any in. But then so that's going to be announced, through Aradi Academy's newsletter. And then what's coming up? Well, what's coming up? It's a master class, one of those standalone lectures where we do training, although it's a pre-recorded lecture, but it's followed by a Q&A and training, a whole hour and a half or two. And that's going to be released on Monday. So it's Tarot for Vocation, so it's like I always hear people asking questions about purpose in life, answering a calling directly, or shifting lanes downright. You have a day job and then say, I'm done with that, I want something else. So I put together a master class for what questions to ask the cards, that yield the best, in terms of arriving and making the right distinctions, because without making the right distinctions, you can't really honor your vocation, your calling in beneficial ways, so that we talk about your decisions being sustainable at the end of the day. So that's going to be released on Monday. So I'm going to send out the information about it, and I will give people a week to have a chance to review the material, and then we have a Q&A and a training session. So it's pretty similar to what we've done before in the series of master classes, and it's but it will showcase the Marseille Tarot again. So so if people want to practice with the Marseille Tarot for these particular questions, so I will also take care of the premise for how we formulate these questions regarding vocation, and what we have an inclination for, but we don't always end up honoring. What do we do about that? So so it's I'm excited to present this because it's good material. So I hope people will be interested in signing up for it. Yeah, so that's immediate right here and right now. And then we have a number of other courses that will come. I have one planned, Tarot for Prediction. Then there's going to be the more cards and magic, Tarot and Necromancy. I guess tis the season, as Shakespeare used to say. Halloween is gonna be here, so maybe we want to do some magic with our dead, This I ran this course last year, and it was quite popular. People loved it, so so I thought, okay, let's do a rerun for those that missed it. So so we have planned a few other activities. It's all on aradiacademy.com. Want to see that.
And I have the link as well below. It's all kind of included, and so just
So we normally try to have a tentative teaching schedule for like blocks of 6 months ahead, so just to give people a heads up, for about what's coming. So but I'm always excited to welcome everyone. So
me too. I'm very excited about what's coming up. But yes, your decks, I mean, you and Bent and many of us who follow you on social media, we know how incredible your collection is, and so many of us are a little bit jealous at times when we see your cards. So if you can just share with us your most treasured decks, and maybe a few memories or stories if you have, about some of the most special ones that you have in your collection.
As I was just saying, I have a whole pile here. I don't know if we can go through too many decks, but I have 3 categories. So let's see, maybe I can go through these 3 categories. Well, also in line with what you said you would like to see, and let's hope that others joining us here will also enjoy seeing some of the stuff.
Absolutely, we deck people here most of us.
But let me just make this remark, and it's also a way of killing a myth, because I mean there are so many myths that go around, like who you are and what you are. Sometimes people seem to know a lot more than about you than you yourself know. That's always very entertaining. Um, but in terms of collecting, so people refer to me as a collector. Let me just kill this myth. I'm not a collector. And you know how I'm not.
Not really.
I'm not a collector, and because I guess there are the various definitions of what it means to collect cards, but because I was fortunate enough to have come across true collectors, or the ones who are like by definition collectors, I know that I don't even come close to that. So therefore, let me just say that although I have a number of I would say interesting decks, I don't collect them because I have already an idea as to what I want to build up. I mean, that's the whole job of a collector, that you start with something and then you want to build it up to whatever your capacity. So I don't do that. So the famous Kay Frank Jensen, whose 20th century collection of tarot decks he gave it as a gift to Roskilde University, and then later on the Royal University of Copenhagen acquired it. Yeah, so I don't have any dealings with that anymore since I left the university world. So now he was a collector, and he was a. I mean, not only did he have just about everything that was ever produced in the 20th century up until the year 2000 when he decides. So, so this is the guy who has his categories in order, including chronology and sequence. So he stopped in the year 2000, and then, he gave the whole thing away as a gift. So, and I mean, that's that kind of thing. And then registering, just his registry, like I get a headache, People ask me, so how many decks do you have? In all honesty, I have no idea how many decks I have, because that's not how I operate. I just, try to have my ears open, my eyes open, and if something comes my way that I like, then I go and get it. And then it just joins the numerous boxes and shelves I have here in the house. So just today, when I was going through my some of my old Etea decks, right? So I realized, I have 6 Etea Limon, and it's like I had no idea. So what the hell do you need 6 of them for? And it's like, it's a good question. I don't know what I need them for. I don't know. Although they each have some quirkiness, and that is the reason why I acquired them. And I'm going to show you some. So I'm not a collector, in the sense of registering everything. I don't have in the number of thousands. I have a few good hundreds, of decks. But what I go for aesthetics primarily. And then if we talk about historical decks, then I like provenance, So I like I like to know where the cards came from, who they originate with. And then as it happens, if I'm lucky enough, to get my hands on some original art, then I like to have that as part of my collection, but not as a collector, So I have a collection, but not as a collector. I'm more like an amateur, and just someone who invests time and money maybe in looking at beautiful things or strange things. So for instance, I'm never interested in decks, commercial decks, just let's put it that way. Yeah. So it's like, what's the new vogue, On that I am like totally with Oscar Wilde, and not just as a representation of of my life in general here, but just in general, like everything popular is wrong. He said. So I mean, with no offense, yeah, but I don't hop on any kind of trends or wagons, so I just don't do that. So though when we talk about contemporary decks, if a deck is well put together from a graphic design point of view, and if I see, because I'm interested in graphic design, so if I see that the artist actually has good understanding of symmetry, rhyme, patterns, color, and all that, then I consider it. But otherwise, I mean, all those that what's the new vogue? Oh, everyone is going Lenormand, or everyone is going the Marseille, and then you
Mm.
have a slew of productions. And although, I mean, excellent, more power to people who do that. I think it's wonderful
Mm.
to see so many takes. But from an aesthetic point of view, honestly, I don't think that all of them are very well done. They are not.
Mm. No. Mm.
And I'm just not interested in those that are that have neither good thinking behind the creation nor, you know,
Mm.
any kind of understanding of basic aesthetics. So, you know, so the decks I acquire are carefully chosen for the aesthetic value and for provenance. Yeah.
Mm.
So let me just with no further ado. Otherwise, as I said, I'm not gonna. So I have three categories that I hope just to show
Mm.
some things off.
I'm so excited. And you and Bent, do you keep your decks separate or you kind of share most of them that you read
Separate
with
in
it?
what sense?
Sorry?
In what sense? Like
No,
my
I
deck.
mean, because I know, I mean, Bent, like, he does readings, right, in his group on
Oh
every
yeah.
Friday, and also he uses very rare decks. So do you share them? Do you read with the same decks? So some of them you do, and some of them you kind of
Yes,
aesthetically
we do.
disagree
Yes,
about?
we do. And maybe we can talk about my decks and his decks. I mean, maybe he's gonna hate me for saying this, but like he likes to back up all sorts of Kickstarter projects, and yes, excellent. He is supporting the artists, yeah. But some of these decks, like I just take a good look at them, and then I'm like, no thanks. I just wanna run. So you know, so those kind of things, they have a special place. In all honesty, I don't even know where the hell he keeps them. So I'm not in. I never touch the shit. So he has let's call it his collection, you know, will be a lot more eclectic in that sense,
Mm.
because he's just like, oh, let's see, oh, somebody has done a new playing card, you know, and then he's curious, yeah, so he's more curious. So I'm a little bit more of a, yeah, I don't know, of an I don't know, elitist bitch, you know. It's
I'm owning it, yeah.
I just don't like everything. So you know,
Mm.
so but he goes and buys some things and not always abiding by his own otherwise very sharp discriminatory power. So that being said, let me just say that he's not he's not buying decks because he lacks discrimination. That's not it. But he has his own reasons, and in that sense, we do keep these decks apart. Or anyway, while I was going through the pile of what I wanted to show you, just as an example, I didn't actually stumble over any of his decks. So you know, so by that very occurrence, I can say that maybe we do keep them separated. So there is the answer to your question. Okay, so the three categories. So I have a few that I want to show you that are totally unique in the world. That means that I'm the only person who actually has them. Nobody else has them, at least to my knowledge. To my knowledge, nobody else has these decks. Now, some of them it's because of their utter scarcity. Two of them. And then, or is it, well, actually, three or four? Now I'm counting. um, and others because I just happen to have acquired the original art. So not all of them are historical in the sense that they go back to 1700s. But I acquired the original art. So I mean, sometimes I even think, like, man, imagine I have the copyrights for this stuff. You know, it's like, but there you have it. So I have the original art, and it's like it's in my hands. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do with it. You know, reproduce if I want to. Which so far I have no such intentions. It's too much work. And besides, you know, it's not sure others would be interested. But you know, I have a few.
I'm very interested in one. Like, I know one, and I'm just so very interested in that.
So let me just start, you know, maybe the one that has been shown, and since we talked about the Marseille Tarot, and a lot of people love it, you know, this was a gift from K. Frank Jensen. After he died, his widow gave it to me in accordance with his wishes. So you know, so nobody really knows in terms of uh, like when exactly these decks were produced. It's always difficult with these historical decks, but of course we know some stories about the stamps, and so that sometimes they are referred in all the texts, and that's how we know something about the which decade or year they have been made within. So here is the Carol Zoya deck.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't do gloves because I'm not one of those In fact, actually, speaking of conservation, some people say, "Oh, look at that. She's so egotistical. She's not wearing any gloves, so dopo di me l'acqua, as they say. After me, the flood. I don't care." So that's not. I don't think in those terms, like, "Oh, I have to leave a legacy," or I don't know. I hope after me, I don't have any children. I don't have no idea who will inherit this. Haven't made any plans. But meanwhile, I play with them as much as I like, and no gloves. In fact, the conservationists, they say, especially if it's books, they say don't use gloves. Use your own hands, because the oils that you have in your own hands is better for vellum, and that applies also, in fact, to the cards. Let me just see the Carol Zoya cards. 17. So it's a bit unclear, whether we are here with 1760 or 1780. I have no idea. Nobody knows really. There is very little writing about them. They were made in Turin. So and they are soapy, so they they are treated with some soap. And then I don't know, it's in a way it's a bit difficult to show people like back in the days, or at least for a while, the Italians, what they did, they used two sheets, so they limbed the back, and then they turned over the sheet of paper on the back, and so you have a border here. So sometimes they didn't do a good job, so sometimes the craftsmen didn't manage to limb properly or cut the back foil, so that it doesn't cover the woodcut design here, so you have all sorts of quirkiness. But what I love about these soapy decks, I call them, is the sauna. I don't know if I can listen to that. Oh yeah, and it's like they just feel amazing, so
Can imagine, yeah. Have you done resoaping them? Have you soaped them yourself now?
No,
Yeah,
I never do any kind of with these old things. I actually don't do any kind of restoration. Because I actually that takes away from its value if we talk in those terms. So in fact, if people sit with any kind of books, don't do rebindings of your 16th century things. I just don't,
Yeah.
So no, and so I haven't touched them. The only thing that ever, in fact, when Frank gave them to me, he said, I think you are probably the first one whoever opened them. See this one here. I love it. So this is the place for the stamp. So I think that the reason why it survived somehow, it's because it went unstamped. Maybe it was discarded precisely because whoever did the job, maybe they didn't do such a good job. So limbing but they are pristine. They're absolutely pristine. There is no, so it's apart from the aesthetics, or if you suffer from OCD or one of those, if we have to introduce all these labels, they are pristine. Sometimes the only thing that you can see, I don't know, so you can see here, for instance, in the limbing of the paper, sometimes they didn't limb it properly, so you get so I think that what happened is that the Carol Zoya managed to survive the times because it got discarded. The deck got discarded somehow and put away, and then it just sat there for 300, 500 years, 400 years. So that's the Carol Zoya deck. The full deck, totally beautiful. There are no blemishes.
Well, I have one card from you, and I treasure it.
Exactly, that's it. That's a facsimile. So so there are no blemishes other than just the time. Yeah. So
Agnes is saying that they sound amazing. Agnes, she's very good at making cards.
Yeah.
Agnes from France, yeah.
Yeah. They are incredible. So
Mm,
I mean, I wish people could just touch them, and then just.
yeah.
So speaking of being with hardcore collectors, I had the
Mm,
good fortune of hanging out with them, and they were not so peculiar about don't touch this, where are your gloves, So so I had the good fortune to hold some of the most precious items in my hands, and just that feeling that the materia, the
mm,
tactile aspect of it, I can't even, so this one I people ask me, so do you ever read with it? Oh yeah, you bet, and the reason for that is because the sound of the shuffling, just to shuffle it,
yeah.
was like boom, sends me to some place,
Mm.
I go into
Talk
a class.
about magic. It's kind of already magic in there, right? It's
Yeah,
infused with the age. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's it. So that's a beautiful deck, old deck, historical deck. To my knowledge, again, I don't know of any other collector who has the Carol Zoya original cards. So not like reproductions after. So let's just say I'm lucky.
Mm.
Okay, along the same scarcity or uniqueness, we are not even talking about scarcity here, because it's not like, oh yeah, there are three in the world. No, there's only one in the world, and it's right here. It's on my table. So same thing here with Jakob Holmblad. He was a famous Danish card maker. So this one is a play on the Bible, So I was like, I wonder what he was thinking. So it's called Samlede Werke, which is like the magnum opus, um,
Mm.
and it says like volume 1 and 2, and because it's a two deck. Let me just show you. Look at her.
Oh,
I
wow.
wish I could show you the light,
Mm.
the boards here. Let me see.
Mm.
They're beautiful. Um, the end boards of the so-called book. So now these are also from early 1700s, and again, I'm the only one who has them. So nobody else in the world has these cards. So look at them.
Mm.
I mean, they're like one of the things that I talked to Frank about was that it's quite incomprehensible at the time how Jakob Holmblad managed to reproduce this purple color.
Mm.
So I mean, he did some research, and back in the days, they just didn't, they see, I don't know to what extent one can see.
Mm.
So this was difficult to reproduce
Mm.
then,
It was even more like turquoise and teal because we kind of had just primary colors, right? Just kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So so the talk is, how the hell did he do that?
Yeah.
How did he mix the stuff? So here is the ace of diamonds. There is a stamp on it. Yeah,
Mm.
but again, completely non-blemished. So it's a two deck. So one, the 52 cards. Yeah, so one is blue on the back, and the other is crimson.
Mm.
Again, so
But the cards are they identical
they're
themselves.
identical.
Yeah.
They are totally identical. So it's only the backs that differ. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but they're amazing. And the reason why I acquired these, because speaking of why do you want to get such a thing?
Mm.
Yeah, why do you why do you want to pay so much money? Like, right. So it's because you see this dame here, the Queen of Diamonds, she holds a camellia
Yeah.
flower in her hand.
Yeah.
So of course, because my name is Camellia, I thought, oh, I have to have this day.
Mm. No,
So
the colors are so beautiful. Like, yeah.
some would say, oh well, that was your criteria, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
If you get
totally.
like that, so it's like, yeah, and then that purple color. I mean, I have to say that it's absolutely
Mm.
astonishing. I mean, and
Mm.
one of the things with playing cards that's hard to pull off is actually the faces, from the period, So it's too bad I can't. I mean, I would need to have a macro lens for this to show the details. By
Mm.
the way, I have them featured on occasion on my Instagram account. So
Yeah.
where I use a close up so people can see them better if there is an
And
interest.
zoom them as well. That's what I do. Yeah.
But I mean, just to show, you know, what there is out there in the world. But sadly, I mean, for the collectors who might covet this, you know, I mean, be my guest. Go ahead and try and find them. But you'll be hard pressed because, you know, at least in terms of knowing about others having these two decks, there aren't any. So I'm the only one who has them. So here is some of the suits. Very simple, but it's incredible. So the way they pulled off the faces, right, and the drawings, they're just so beautiful, you know. So they're not so playing cards. You know, most of them, the faces are not always so successful, but the amount of detail on these ones is just incredible. So the Samlede Werke by Jakob Holmblad. So
That's stunning. Yeah.
famous.
I'm going through playing card stage now, so for me, like playing cards is like
yeah. Okay, so let me see what next. Right. So maybe again the absolutely unique. Yeah, let's look at the witch deck. That's a contemporary deck made by John Upton of England. So John Upton, he had a coven up in Wood, and he used to hang out with, or you know, do a lot of a lot of sex magic or whatever you want to call it in the woods. So he created this deck that's called the Tarot of the Witches of Ayrshire, or I don't know how you pronounce that even. And I actually sit with his original drawings. So this is the only yeah, I mean, obviously it's like owning 78 paintings, original paintings. So you can see them. So they are just some like a watercolor, you know, that are pasted on this green board. So I could just Frank Jensen did a few decks, you know, on very heavy cardstock that are they are scarce, yeah. So, and we had an auction once for Vita. When Frank died, you know, Vita, she was there with a huge house, and then Bent he ran a few auctions for Vita. So we had one of those decks that were made on the basis of this. But I sit with the original drawings. So they are so incredible. I mean, so again, they are completely unique. Yeah, look at all that. I would say, what's up with all this pornographic deck? I don't know, and I suppose by some kind of understanding of what pornography is. I don't know. I suppose you could call it that. I don't. To be honest, though, I love pornographic decks. So, so they have. So, but it's But this deck, the interesting thing about is that John Upton, he did the drawings completely on the basis of what they did as rituals in the woods with his own coven. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
The Ace of Wands. Yeah. And then they did these colorings, and then they did. So I sit to the original drawings or watercolors, and nobody else has the stuff. I have it.
Yeah, so cool to have original drawings made into the cards.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, in this day and age, where you have good printers, good scanners, I could just reproduce it if I wanted to, but sometimes I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I don't really have any interest in making commercial stuff out of it. Even though I suppose the whole idea of publishing something, and that goes for books, is that you sell. I mean, like what else is new? Okay, so let me show you another one that's also very special and unique. And we are there with the green stuff, or so-called. This is an oracle. The Ogham Oracle. So this is also handmade box, handmade coloring. It was made by Colin Murray. He used to be the chief druid, and he was also an architect, and he had his own order. The Golden Section Order Society was called. So he operated in the 70s. Well, when he was 44, he killed himself. He ingested U3 leaves. But before he killed himself, so he left us this amazing art. Now I don't know. I don't even know how to describe this. Now, Murray, he also had a journal, Brigantia, it was called, and it was done in according to the principles that were used by the monks, of the illuminated manuscripts era, the medieval scribes. So he applied those principles to making these cards. They also used architect paper. And he was obviously enamored in design. I don't even know how to describe these cards. So this is all original. It's the original drawing, so it's not a facsimile, it's not a copy, it's not a printed thing. This is the original stuff. Yeah, so that's
He drew on those cards, yeah.
Yeah, in my
And what
house.
are the symbols? Are they ohms? Or like what are the black, the black writing?
Yes, so it's he was a druid, so he combined, Ogham, Ogham sticks, and so we are with that world, yeah. So let me see. Yeah, but I mean it's just the ones interested in all this, yeah,
it's very special, yeah.
they are just incredible. I can't even describe and the feel, because he was an architect. So he, actually I wrote a whole essay. If somebody wants to know, I even thought that in this book I wrote a whole essay as almost like an eulogy, where I talk more about his work. This book, this ancient heart, landscape ancestor self. It was, gosh, I can't even remember when the hell this was. 2015, yeah, so already 7 years ago. So it was edited by Paul Davies and Caitlin Matthews. So I have a whole essay in this book about Colin Murray and his amazing work. I mean, just look at this card; they're just incredible. So this again is original pen to paper architect, and how he even, speaking of like the cardstock, he also limbed. I was like, I don't know how the hell do they do. I mean, how do you take that very thin, because the architect paper is like pergament, so how don't ask, I mean, I get a headache just the thought of the production. Like, no thanks, but there you have it. This is also one I acquired myself. I bought it, so sometimes I just I have no idea why I buy these things. Don't ask me. But as it happened, it's also completely unique.
No, absolutely, yeah.
This box also, so yeah.
And to have it made by him, by himself.
Yeah, he may sat there with all these coloring pens and whatever, all these measurements and all of that stuff. So these are like the handmade. They're like my precious. I just love them because first of all, I try to imagine, what kind of lives these people had, what were they thinking when they were doing this work. Sometimes I like to do some art myself, that falls in the category of the talismanic or the oracular. But, I'm not the patient kind, so I have zero patience for anything. So, yeah, speaking of, I just sat here like, see, I did. Which one is it? This way. So I created these boards, when I released Tarot for Romeo and Juliet, so the book already is a talisman. So for all those who know what that means, so I create some kind of art, but for myself, because I have no patience, and at the same time I like the idea of creating art, or just putting some beauty out in the world. I hope, maybe my design is as hopeless as the ones I'm ever so judgmental of. They have it. We're also full of shit. So anyway, but as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I can't imagine doing the type of work that Colin Murray did. Who sits there. I mean, that's the true nerd. Yeah. So for myself, I have this line. One cut, one blood. Choose two colors tops. No more than that. One is even better. Do it in 30 seconds, and it is what it is, no edits. So this is the result of that. So I did it in 30 seconds, right? Just as
Wow.
a challenge. So I just 30 seconds, that's it, and I don't edit anything. So it is what it is. So I'm attracted to that. So it's like, okay. And I started to do this, I think, some time ago, when I first did the Lenormand deck, I don't know, almost 15 years ago. Because people, at that point, they start discovering that, and then I heard this complaint that it takes like forever to make a deck. I mean, yeah, mind you, if you are Colin Murray and someone, although I don't know how long it took him to do that sort of work, so that can happen, but then I thought, I strongly doubt that it has to take years and years to create anything. I mean, like, come on. So so I just sit down and then I said, I'm gonna do a bloody Lenormand deck like right now, and I did, I did it in the same procedure, 30 seconds per card, and then people say, she's such a lie, she's full of shit. But it's like, well, have you ever watched a Chinese or Japanese calligraphist? I have news for you. I mean, the kind of work that they come up with that can be ever so elaborate, and it never takes them 30 seconds. No, it takes them, how about 3 seconds? No, not even that. So it's like, before people pass judgment of that kind, I always say, educate yourselves. It can be done. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that, all depending on our temperaments and inclinations, we can, if we have that desire to create something, and if people need permissions these days, it's a big thing. So everybody here, I give you permission. Let's please be ever so patronizing like the rest of the world. I give you permission to create something in 30 seconds flat. You can do it. You deserve it. So so there you go. But at the same time, the other kind of beauty, that say those that have a true understanding again of design. Now I don't have a formal training in graphic design, other than just what I pick up here and there because I'm just interested. But I know some, who know their stuff, and they are professionals, and the work that they can come up with is just astonishing. So I'm all for that. And then it sometimes it can take longer than a day.
Well, I feel like I'm on the kind of side that I cannot draw. Like, I've always been a writer. I can't draw for the sake of me. So that's why I really appreciate having people like you who can do things within 30 seconds, right? And I have your Helium Lenormand. I love people like Agnes who sits and glues and layers the backings of the cards.
I mean,
I'm just such a appreciator, yeah. And that's where I am. I just love cards, and I love all the variety of them. Yeah. But
no, I'm not envious of Agnes and people who can do that. So, but I appreciate that kind of dedication. That's a beautiful thing.
And I know that you got a deck from my friend from Justin, the one that he handmade for you as well. So yeah, I really admire the dedication and the time and the effort. But
I
want something to tell me what.
Yeah, just to be clear, John Upton didn't make the deck for me. I just happened to acquire it, So I acquired his original art, so nobody else has it. That's the only copy that he ever made by his hand. If there is another, then obviously it will have other variations. The lines are not the same. The coloring will be different. So I don't know. But to my knowledge, he only did the one, and I have it. And by the way, it's from 1995. Yeah, that one. So he didn't do it for me. So. But speaking of, on occasion, I am actually ever so fortunate to have people do things for me. And that was also one I wanted to showcase in this first batch. Gosh, what's the time? Yeah. Of original hand, crafted and that nobody else has. Yeah. So there is a lot of handcrafting stuff out there that, can be ever so unique. and obviously, only one person can have it. But yeah, in this category, in the Star World here on what went on to also grab the world, the people, so Upton's deck was very sought after and still is, and maybe also precisely because it's so naughty, so it's so fun to play with, and then see all those all people binding one another and all of that, you just want to laugh. It's excellent. So, but people who do things just for you, Ryan Edward created the Maybe Lenormand. So, yeah, back in the days, he was when nobody knew anything about the Lenormand cards. I was tutoring him one-on-one. And then we talked about creating decks and all that, So he started doing that, and then he published his Maybe Lenormand to great acclaim, and go and get it. It's still available. He did both a finer edition, and then he did a commercial edition with US games. So excellent, go and get it. It's a beautiful thing. But when he finished the thing, some years after, so guess what? He sent me his original drawings. He said, if anybody should have the original, you should have it. So I said, well, thank you. So nobody else has ever seen Ryan's designs. So this is like a show ever. So now you can see what Ryan was working with. So if you have the Maybe Lenormand, you'll recognize.
Yeah, no, totally. I have maybe Lenormand, yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan is an illustrator by profession. So of course he knows how to work with with the Adobe Creative Suites. I wish I had that skill. I mean, at that level. So so he. But these are the cards, yeah. So he gave them to me, yeah. As you can see them, so these are the sketches. So so when, nobody in the world has the stuff. I was like, yeah, should I feel flattered? Yes, I would feel flattered,
No, of course, yeah. And I mean, on this one, you don't see it, but in his like Maybe Lenormand, he did a really great job with playing card inserts, with the court cards that he created. Because we don't see that happening very often. Like, even those Lenormand decks that have playing card inserts, we don't really see the playing cards, kind of done from scratch in a creative way, yeah. And these are like really fun, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so I have more in that category, but if I have to go through all, then we're not gonna make it. But I just thought, okay, let's see some modern or some more contemporary decks, some of the historical ones that are quite unique, that only I have, or else because I happen to have stumbled over people's original art. That's another talk, but nonetheless, I sit with them here and I have them. Now, I have a few Etea decks that I thought I could share with you. I'm getting hot here. Let me see.
I'm sitting next to the heater. It's still quite cold evening.
Yeah, it's terrible. So anyway, I may have to open a window. Never mind. So just like why I buy decks, so here is one that was basically not exactly him, but inspired by him, but still from the previous century. So this is the Oracle de Dame, so with the Etea meanings you have here. But now, why did I acquire this? So these actually are also came out as in a magazine or something, so they are from the previous century. And they are also pasted on a board now. But why did I acquire them? So now these are not all that. I mean, you can find reproductions of this, no problem. But look, look at the backs.
Notes, yeah, wow.
Look at all that ink, old ink. So I'm a paper fetishist. So and I like to work with ink. So of course, if I come into possession of people's inking anything, then you can be sure I'm interested. So I absolutely love this. So of course here we have a fortune teller, whoever she was or he was.
What's the language? Is it in French or
Yeah, it's French. Yeah.
French,
So it's all French. So in principle, I mean, it's not even that special, but because when you read and it's quite legible, no problem. You recognize that it's actually that all the stuff comes from Etea's book, the manière, of how to read the cards and the way of reading the cards. His book from 1760. So nothing special. I mean, that book has been reproduced and done, ever since. But in addition to what you find there are some personal notes, and I kind of like that. Like suddenly you read something and then you say, that's what this person was thinking. It's like, if I had the time, I could transcribe all this, or translate it also. And I just don't have the time for it. But there you have it. So, in terms of how do I acquire my decks? So I acquire them like that, like what's funny or what's interesting. So that was one Etea. I mean, the more Etea Zone deck, here is a classic, the classic, also an old pristine form. Well, more or less. There's some blemish here. I suppose I could wash that off if I wanted to. But as I said, I don't touch these old decks. I prefer not to do anything with them in terms of restoring or washing. I don't do anything. So this is the one that most people.
And that will be probably the Grimoire version, right? Based on the back.
Exactly.
It will be one of the earlier Grimoire.
That's right. Exactly. So this is the Grimoire version. So so on an early version. So so it's scarce enough, yeah, and it's beautiful and no problem. But the more interesting ones that people really like to. Let me see which ones. I have too many decks. Yeah, the Petite Etea. That's also the Etea Limon is called Etea Limon because of the publisher. So we have these ones. So you can see the Etea Limon. They have a whole other color scheme. There is this blue border, and they all come with these backs. Yeah. So some are better colored again than others. I have one that I got. I don't know if it's this one. As I said, I have 6 Etea Limon. So the Etea Limon, they are much more sought after than the other that I just showed you. So in terms of if people are like, okay, go on eBay or something. So, but this one I acquired because I couldn't stop laughing, and I thought, I wonder what. Maybe the colorist must have been drunk or something. So the blemishes, and then they go out of the frame. So it's like, it amuses me greatly to see sloppy work of that kind. I hate sloppy work.
But sometimes those imperfections makes the deck so perfect, right? With the gives them character.
So I prefer it that people are careful. Yeah, with this sort of thing, I don't have a lot of tolerance. But when we are with the 200 years old stuff, then it becomes kind of amusing, and then you start thinking again, like, I wonder what they were thinking, or what have they been smoking or drinking something. So here is another Etea Limon. See the backs, and this has been like done to death because I mean that the deck doesn't have rounded corners, but this one has. But why did I acquire this? For the same reason. I mean, look at the scribbling. I mean, the mutilation of this deck. This deck has been thoroughly mutilated, as you can see. It's like, oh my God, like what the hell is going on? And it has been used. So if somebody wants to know, like sometimes people go like, I wish I could get my hands on some old decks so that I have access to another fortune teller's work or or energy. So here, I don't know. I haven't tested it to see what kind of energy this old fortune teller quite sloppy actually. What is that? I mean, I couldn't live with that. I mean, I would die if I had to be so messy. I don't like this sort of mess. But from yeah, honestly, I know that these days we are all supposed to be in praise. Let's praise everything that's messy, but I don't like it. I prefer the carefully thought out, and I prefer to see that people, you know, that people are careful. Let's put it that way. Right. So let me just. I need to open. So let me. Because it's so hot. So sorry.
So what's your most recent acquisition? Which deck was the latest one that you got?
Oh, yeah. Which? Yes, I can't remember. It's been a while. Yeah, I can't remember honestly. Because as I said, I don't. Yeah, I don't buy new decks as such unless they are interesting. Yeah. So, but speaking of that kind of stuff, a few very old, and then I'll show you some new modern ones. What's the time? Yeah, I'm looking at the time. So I have one here. So now we had the Atea. So of course the Atea cards, they have been used for fortune telling. But then we also have the fortune telling decks, for instance, these types. So now this is also a very old one. These are the backs. The sorcerer's the sorcerer's fortune telling deck is called from 1827.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have 1827. So now you can find this in a reproductive form. Some places, I don't know, maybe, yeah. Let me see with the light. Yeah, but they are beautiful. So the cardstock. So what I like about the cards, so anything with plastic, I don't like that very much. So which is also the reason why I stay away from acquiring new decks, because they all tend to have too much plastic. So yeah, so the fortune tellers there from 1827. Some other editions came out in 1888, but this is the first one.
Wow.
So that's a kind of a rarity. Yeah. So you may find it's easier to find the one from 1888, but the 1827 is actually quite difficult to find. To my knowledge, again, I don't think, unless you're very lucky, I don't think you can find it. Here is another very cute one that I love. This is also in the same. It's a kind of a concoction that combines Lenormand, astrology, iconography.
Oh, wow.
A Danish deck, in fact, Yeah, and it's also from the late 1800s. So also quite old. I like to play with this one on occasion. Cute.
Yeah, it looks a bit Lenormand, yeah.
Yes, it has, people combined all sorts of, once they figured out these icons, for society games, they, yeah, I wish you could feel the card stock, so.
Yeah, I wish I could feel the cardstock too.
These are the backs. So just the feel of them, so that they're quite beautiful. Here is a peacock.
Yeah, very cool.
You have both more standard Lenormand symbols, but then also like the peacock, some others. But same drill, in terms of reading with them, like, I don't know. I did my big Lenormand book, so same approach. Here is an old Lenormand, speaking of a monochrome Lenormand that I haven't really seen it anywhere else.
No, I haven't, yeah.
So it's quite nice. I'm not even sure how old this one is actually, but old enough. Oops. So you can see where the Dondorf people, they took their own inspiration from.
Yeah, because I can see in the hard cards it's very Dondorf-like.
This
Yeah.
is the back, yeah. So they are like more like the commercial version of the Dondorf. Used to be the high end
Mm.
with all the. I mean, in fact, putting too many gold plates on the last one that caused them bankruptcy in 1933.
Right.
They
Yeah.
used 17 chromo plates, chromolithographic plates, 17, gold, and then they went bankrupt. Like, okay.
Oh, I didn't know that, right?
Yeah, actually, so they did the jubileum, deck, and it was a beaut. But I mean,
Mm.
what can you do? So, and then they do say, so this is part of the documented history. They went bankrupt because of that. They invested so much money in those plates, 17 plates. That's a lot of plates, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So much gold, and they just went bankrupt. So no, because people, they couldn't sell it for the price. So it goes to show, sometimes.
Yeah, because people just wanted like, yeah,
I also
basics,
have
like cheap
I
bags.
also, I also have designs. I like to do some beautiful books, and then the price has to reflect. And then like, okay, people are not all that interested, though. I don't know. Yes. So with the Lenormand, let me show you another interesting one. I'm looking at too many decks. So I like these pastes from that's some fortune tellers in the 30s, 40s, 50s. I don't know. Some housewives, I guess, they got their magazines, and then they cut out the cards, and then they use some boards. So here is a very orange one. I love this elongated form. So this is also a Lenormand deck. Look at this. Look at these colors. I mean, I just
Oh,
totally.
yeah, I remember seeing it somewhere. You posted probably a few pictures.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So this is also the orange.
Yeah.
So somebody did a reproduction of these cards, that came out in in some Elle magazine, or as an accompaniment to the Elle magazine. So some people can actually find them in that reproduction form. But here I see to the original again with the boards, like you can even see that whoever, like, look at this. Speaking of sloppiness, this woman's X-Acto knife was not so good.
We don't have a guillotine like we do now.
Yeah, but it's almost like that's the nice thing about, because it's like, what I like about it is like, okay, so it's not professionally done, and it could be a lot better, but I like the dedication behind it nonetheless, so because it takes some dedication to sit there and copy paste and create a thing like this, and even think about the orange. I mean, but look at this. I mean, look look at this. Oh, sorry. The star. Yeah, so they have some strange. Yeah, so so it's kind of like I love it, so I totally love it. So and then I like to take it out and play with it. Look at the woman, it's so quirky, and here it's almost like, what's this one doing there? The ring with some kind of chalice. It's almost, you can think like um the inspiration from the tarot, the Ace of Cups.
Ace of Cups.
So people used to blend all sorts of things. Here is the coffin. That's also so I acquired decks not because I'm a collector, but because I just think, oh, that's kind of funky, or that's interesting, or let me see, what did this person do with those cards, So
it's kind of almost getting a bit of a glimpse into a person's approach in life and how they do things. Yeah.
So what else? I have so many boxes that can hold all sorts of other things. So speaking of the inks, I also have a very old playing card deck that I have here, and then some scribbling at the bottom, and I like some people had amazing handwriting. Look at this. I don't know if you can see. but
Yeah, a little bit.
that
Yeah.
very thin pen, and oh,
Mm.
beautiful. It's so beautiful. So so I buy decks for this extra, if you like,
Mm.
this extra thing. Okay, so what's the I could continue.
Yeah, we still got
So
like
now
24
again, I
minutes.
have many more. I have many more in this category, but I thought I could just show you
Mm.
some fun ones, some of the ones that speaking of the
Mm.
imperfections that have those imperfections or that are mutilated by sloppy writing or sometimes
Mm.
beautified with some extremely aesthetically pleasing looking,
Mm.
handwriting. Now, the other things that I like. They are the art tarots. You asked
Mm.
me to say something about
Yeah,
them.
yeah, if you can, because yeah, I know that art tarot is very much. I mean, yeah. So I'm kind of more curious about what makes a deck an art tarot for you and for you to use it, because there are so many decks, as we know, they are considered art tarot, but they are not the most pleasing. They may not be functional. They may not. Be, I'm just trying to be like
Yeah.
polite on that. Yeah, yeah. But
Well,
yeah, which ones are more exceptional? Like if you have any like art tarot or
well,
if
yeah. How do you define it? But of course, there are very set rules. I mean, anybody who has gone even to graphic school, you will be met instantly with the first 10 principles of what
Mm,
art is, and not everything is art. So that's bad news for all those who think, well, you can do anything. Well, yes, you can, but is it art? No, it's kitsch, or it will be falling into some other kind of category that, I mean, sorry, it's not it. And everybody who has even the most rudimentary kind of knowledge about what art is will know that, So it's like,
mm,
okay, I'm not even merely being nasty or judgmental here for
mm,
no reason, because I have nothing better to do. There are very rigid principles, that go into the definition of art. By the way, I can't remember. You were on that workshop that I did some years ago on art.
yeah, 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 yeah. I didn't do it live. I did the recorded one, just
Yes,
a bit like
yeah.
telling you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
still there. It's still on the Aradia Academy on the off the shelf.
Mm,
It sits there. It has been archived. So so there I go much deeper into what is an art tarot,
mm,
on how do we.
mm,
So I go into making a case for how we distinguish precisely between the more or
mm,
less commercial decks and then art decks. So for me, an art deck. Let me just say, okay. So let me show you the uh, favorite. One that I use often, or favorite. I have several favorites in that category, but for instance, the Sergio Topi. So this Sergio Topi used to be an consecrated, so sorry, yeah, that I use that word, but in sometimes you need to be a consecrated. In other words, you need to have had, I don't know, hundreds of exhibitions and to have had the stamp of approval from other artists. Are you an artist or
mm,
are you somebody, an opportunist? Yeah, so there is actually a difference. So so Sergio Topi was one of the most celebrated artists. So he did an art tarot. I mean, look at this beaut. I mean, I use this when I do my haiku readings. I have
mm,
these snappy short haiku readings, so I tend um to use the Topis deck. This is just the majors, although he also did the full, but this is the majors because this came in a limited edition. um I can't remember how many. Yeah, 1,000. So this is number
mm,
574. So
mm,
you can find the reproduction of this, though not in this size. They're
mm,
much smaller and obviously a lot cheaper, though they are also pretty scarce. But this
mm,
limited edition is more difficult to find, but
yeah,
you can still find it. So this is an art tarot, yeah. So it's an
mm,
art tarot done by somebody who understands the basic principles of what good design is and what goes into it, and
mm,
how we distinguish between art and now in places you'd say, okay, why isn't his big faces, like they're always in the face, why isn't that kitsch? Yeah, well, see, that's a good discussion. That's a good discussion, Um, and it's not, because because you can see that if you study the stuff, then you will see that there is very careful consideration precisely of things like balance, perspective, color,
Yeah.
all of that. So that was Topi. Another one I totally love. Yeah, I tend to like Italian artists. So, I don't know. I have many Italian decks. So, for instance, the Amerigo Folchi. I love this deck. He did a deck using scarves, just scarves,
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what a great idea. So, an art tarot will also take on a concept or just an object, and say, well, why can't we translate, the idea of using a silk scarf, in 78, as it were, 78 different sets, for each card, So look what he came up with, So he did the whole deck, that features silk scarves. Oh, look at that Empress,
Oh, wow.
a big coin, or that's the Queen of Denier as the Queen of coins. Yeah, Queen of. So look at that. So wonderful. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes this is the Empress. Yes, I thought that was the Empress. This is the Empress.
Oh,
Even more lavish. So so an art tarot will be taking a particular concept, and then try and render it visually, philosophically, if you like, or try and look at the essential philosophical idea behind the concept, and then try and render it graphically, so that it ends up telling an ekphrastic story, that is to say, a story that uses an image to tell it,
yeah. And it's still, when it comes to tarot, it needs to be functional as
Yeah.
well, right? So no, absolutely. Yeah.
A graphic representation of a verbal, idea that is that's otherwise circulates in novels or in poetry, so that's what ekphrasis is. So so I like those kind of artists who go across the disciplines, so they borrow from philosophy, from poetry, and then they, suddenly, you have a whole world. So this one, Il Diavolo, from Andrea Piccini, so another Italian. So I also love what this one did from a graphic point of view. So now this is what I consider the art tarot. Speaking, the others, I don't know. So look at this very geometrical, I guess, to an extent, but also color here features
The
very.
use of color, that's kind of the immediately jumps at us,
Yeah, and here what you see also, that what he operates with is also a form of palimpsesting, where you have like superimpositions, where you have forms and then forms within forms. So what he creates is a sort of a mise en abîme reflection, like a regression of the concept, like ad infinitum, or it brings you the idea towards that, and that's how the sublime gets to be created, when you see what's being reflected. Yeah. So these are art tarot. Yeah. Italian, Andrea Piccini.
Very cool.
So these are quite well, I don't know, from the 80s. Yeah. So I forgot to say one was Amerigo Folchi.
No, thank you so much for sharing those. Yeah, it's such a treat.
A French guy, let's see, among them, and also my favorite, Tarot de l'Outre-Baie.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing it.
Very abstract. So this one operates with some abstract form. So really is now what he does is completely essentializes the thought even more so than we find it in any other symbolical renditions. To just lines and dots, So of course, those invested in graphic design, they know the importance of, of a line and the dot. In fact, there is nothing else beyond it. So so the art is like, how do you put it together? How do you permute with? How do you stretch lines? So I'm in love with this deck. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. So and I like it.
I can see why. Yeah, no, totally.
Like this. Yeah. The Queen of Batons. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, these are works of art. Yeah. So like a work of art that somehow got to be turned into a tarot. Now, some would say, what has this got to do with tarot? Well, nothing, obviously. It's art, yeah, so nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. But we appreciate it. And from a divination point of view, if you ask me, I have absolutely no issues divining with anything. I can divine with 3 dead grandmothers, I don't have an issue. Let me see. Tarocchi di Renato Guttuso. Also in Italian, that's the box. And also he does a lot with colors. Very interesting. Oops, look at these colors.
Yeah, the colors are cool. Yeah.
Yes, let me see the reflection. There's too much reflection.
I kind of also like the shape of the cards, like little shorter, kind of more squarish.
Yes. In terms of the shape, I have to say that I prefer the elongated ones, the toppy. I think they're more
I like weird shapes, like different ones. The standard, whatever we call standard, like US.
Oh yeah, the round ones. I have to say, I have a few round ones, and I also have squared ones, like in the shape of the diamond. I can never get into that. I'm biased. So so depending again on what an artist does with the deck, and how a form lends itself to it.
And how the image fits into the shape.
Within Guttuso's world here, this form, it's almost like unthinkable that he would use anything else. So that's also what I like about it. That it's like, when you think in terms of art, it's like how I determine what is art. When I look at it and I ask myself a very simple question, and not that I myself should be a genius or should come up from an informed way, but it's something that determines it for me. And then it's like, okay, in my own perception, could this artist have done any better? And if I decide no, he could not have done it any better, then I'm like, okay, you are in the presence of art. And you are going to take the next 2 minutes and bow to this artist and say thank you. Because he has just managed to enrich your world. So, that's how I put it, So now, of course, the more you read, the more you educate yourself in terms of what art is, the more you will also come to this evaluation from that point, from that positioning, that's quite crucial to take and be able to embody, because otherwise you're just there with a damn uninformed opinion, And as far as I'm concerned, art is not about liking it or disliking it. I mean, we can go around and then I can go to a museum and looking at a man, I have no idea what the fuck that is, but I like it, and then leave it there. But that would not be an informed opinion, you see. So what I'm looking for is often that which brings me beyond the mere articulation of something that has no other ground, that just random words, because now I have them and I can speak them, and then instead of using my breath for something else, I'm just to be throwing about with ideas, because we
still a few minutes. Can we just kind of recover a little bit of magic, because we just show one more and then we kind of talk a little bit.
One more. I'll show this one and then I'll show. Oh gosh, the time. Yes. So this is also in Italian. I thought I should show a woman among, because like, gosh, speaking of, where are the women? Elena Assante. So this one is called the Tarocchi dei Colori, so the tarot of colors. So look what this woman did, also in playing with abstracts. Beautiful. I thought I could just showcase it. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to play with the two.
Hmm.
So you can see what so incredible Italian artists. This is also from the 80s or early 90s, I can't remember exactly. Right. And then I thought I could just round it up here with a type of tarot that people don't do so much anymore unless there is Kickstarter collaborations. But this one is from 98 and it was started by Frank Jensen and his wife, Mail Art Tarot.
Hmm.
So look at this handmade box and everything, right? So if anybody here knows anything about mail art, so usually you'd have a collaboration between 20 artists and each would design a card. And then as a commune, this is like a completely socialist communist enterprise, and I love it for that because what comes out of it is just incredible. The collective art of this sort is just, so here are like Frank, he commissioned 20 artists, 22 because one to design an arcana, but he said, okay, each of you guys will design 3 cards, so we ended up with a deck that contains more than just 22 cards. So so it's so different. So I have several of these mail art projects that turned into cards. So this is from 98, and obviously there are only 22 sets in the world because they only made as many decks as there were people involved in creating them. So you can see here very different representations, and they are all common. Very different representations. Some are more psychedelic, some are more cartoonish, others are more ride the weight like or whatever, 50s magazines or something. That's the tower, I think, or how is it? Yeah. So I also love this kind of art tarots that are based on this type of mail art collaborations.
Yeah.
Well, I have, as I said, I have hundreds of decks, and I could have picked a whole lot more, but then
No, I
yes,
can imagine. Yeah.
then we have to sit here until I don't know, several days. We can do a live workshop if you come to Denmark.
No, I would love to. Yeah, but like because we kind of titled a little bit with magic and talismans. Before
Yeah.
I got introduced to your work, you were the first person who actually used cards to create magic and rituals and to create. Kind of invocations in a way out of the cards. So, how did it come about? How did you start using cards for magic? Was it like your own discovery or somebody introduced it to you?
Well, it's just common sense, So I don't know if it's my own discovery. I don't think I want to claim anything, although obviously there are ideas that I will definitely say this is my goddamn idea. And I would like it that others recognize it as such if it's possible. But in terms of how you use just the whole idea of magic, what is magic when you think about it, and then I think that as far as I'm concerned, I like to connect magic to the ability to see what is obvious, because the obvious is forever eluding us. We think we are so good at spotting it, and yet we are not, I mean, just look at these cards, So why is it that we can determine which ones are close to art and which ones that you can just trash, right? So what enables us to pass these judgments, right? And that is connected to the obvious. What is obvious? What can you see is actually obvious. What's going on here at the level of design, the level of essential idea or principle, so magic is that, just walking around and observing the world you are in, because we are already ever so contaminated by dictations. We think that we come into the world and we have so much free will. Yeah. Let us laugh. So there is no being that's authentic. It's like we're all copies of, I don't know. So what gives us access to magic is actually that ability to get out of this shape, that we have acquired, that we call identity or whatever, that has nothing to do with us. It just has to do with like, I have to look at what's my neighbor doing, or what, over here, or peer pressure, or, it's like, and you have to function in the goddamn bloody world, so you have to abide by some rules. And I'm sorry, nobody escapes that symbolic order of things. Now, when it comes to magic, I see magic as being at the opposite, of this kind of living, where we just have to do things because we need to survive. Uh, and what gives you access to the other world, as it were, to the place beyond all the masks. Let's put it that way. Is your ability to pay attention to what else is happening, And that's why, like, for instance, you go out in nature and you can see nature is not as yet, maybe all of it contaminated by human interventions. And I don't know, see, I elected myself to move to the west coast of Denmark here, completely out in the boons. Only 300 people live here. And I'm close to the sea, exactly 50 steps, and I love to go there, and then I'm just looking at the sky, and I look at the beach, and I'm like, fuck me, man, I'm in the middle of magic, right? So I start observing things like, how does the sand shifts? What does that tell me? What does that tell me about my own human condition? So of course I cannot escape the reflective capacity, because that's what we do. We have language, and without language, and then we think, right? We think. And what we call the emotional field is totally informed by the ability to put everything you go through emotionally into language, into words, So, okay, so
I remember you mentioning, I just wanted to mention the book for people who are not familiar with your work, right? That's kind of that's the magical book, and you mentioned that magic begins with the word, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, magic begins with going beyond the word in a way, because of course, but at the same time, at the level of ritual, we have speech acts, and then the longer back in history we go, the more you'll find is exactly the nonsensical kind of words that would have the same function as going out here and looking at the ways in which the sand dunes shift, and then reflect a little bit on what you're doing here on this planet, so that's magic, as much magic as you have access to. So we have like abracadabra or open sesame, so we have this kind of speech acts that are supposed to produce an effect, so like, as open sesame, you hope that the world to some kind of treasure will be open itself onto you, and then you go there, and then you can almost drown in all the pearls and diamonds. So more power to you, so a lot of people try that kind of thing. So so in terms of how you use cards for magic, and where you get the idea. I mean, when you think about what people have been doing in folklore, yeah, so it's like the same thing, like just think about the herbalist, or a witch concocting some, I don't know what, with all the stuff that she had in her cupboards, and then we have all sorts of recipes, all sorts of Cyprianic, I don't know, grimoires, or I don't know, Scandinavian, or the hoodoo, the root workers in the US and all that, and other places, the Maori people, so you'll see that their magic is all anchored exactly in whatever they saw fit, to use, and what they had at hand that would enable them to cross over, if you like, into this other world, so either you would be verbal about it, or else you would be getting your hands in the dirt, as it were, but use some earth, or mold, make a puppet, and then that puppet will be a representation of something else. Yeah. So we have all these metonymic relations that we would be creating in analogies, that define what magical thinking is all about ultimately. But the scope, or why we want to go there is simply because we just want to get outside or go beyond all these masks. We can hardly ever escape. So so when I thought about the various traditions of coming up with recipes, or how libations, for instance, okay, if you do conjure work and say, I would like to invoke now the presence of the goetic spirits, or let's have Astaroth here, or let's have Andromalius. Yeah, and I ended up writing a whole book about Andromalius, whose function, the 72nd, the demon in the Goetia, in the grimoire, whose sole function is to go and find treasures. I thought, he's a good one, he's a good friend. So, so you go and want to conjure Andromalius and say, okay, I want to enlist you in helping me out, so I want to see something that is obvious, that escapes me, that I cannot otherwise, unless I call on you, because that is already such an aberrant idea, that is it is enough, to have exactly that desired function, that will send me somewhere there where I do this with my fingers, and then I'm the magician, so like hocus pocus, by the way, that is also a magic phrase. And you turn the impossible into something that's possible. Yeah, only your imagination is the limit. So when I looked around and I saw just this, how people describe the types of libation, for instance, or when do you do an offering that consists of libation, or wine or tea or milk to the full moon or whatever, we have all these things, and it's all so goddamn random, isn't it? You just want to laugh, and then some say, but of course there are the purists who say no, it's that one, and it's like, I just want to laugh at that idea. But more power to them, if they have such strong beliefs. No, I have no issue with that. But coming from a Zen perspective, or actually the one who understands just what language is all about, I really have no other alternative than to laugh at this kind of attitudes. Yeah. So what I do myself is simply look at the randomness of how these recipes, so-called, magical recipes, are created on the basis of what, and then I think, well, if I simply say need a more original approach to how I can make an offering, then I can simply just put down 3 cards, and I will look at what they present me with. So why the Oracle Travels Light is all about that. In fact, you get an insight into that. So so if you get the 6 batons, and then you get the Ace of Cups, and then you get the page of or the valet of swords, for instance, then I'm like, okay, so this one, he needs to take his ritual knife and go out and cut the 7 sticks, and put them in a pleasing form, because in magic we like symmetry. So put them, arrange them in a pleasing form, or burn them, depending on whatever inspiration you happen to receive. And then take a glass of water, or have some wine, because the cards also gave us the Ace of Cups. And then you say, okay, so now I'm going to conjure this entity, or the spirit, or Andromalius, or whoever. And if I don't just want to go by the prescribed, recipes that we find, or if we go even longer back, Andromalius doesn't even feature in the Grimorium Verum or some of the earlier grimoires, for instance, around the 1600, 1700. So, so it's like, oh, okay, what are we going to do that? So does that mean that some of these newer demons are not good enough? See, that's also the other discussion that you also want to laugh at, right? So, but whichever it is, say, you want to engage with that kind of dialogue and conversation, what do you do? So you use the cards, Same thing, I mean, not just so you devise a ritual, that is to say, you devise a ritual for conjuring, or you devise a ritual that will give you, that will open that space and say, now I'm in sacred space, because that's the function of a ritual, to create a sacred space so that you go outside of your masks again, yeah, beyond language, beyond what you think, oh, this really makes no sense. This is so aberrant. Yeah, exactly. And the more aberrant it is, the better. Because we need to knock our brain off, all this constantly rational thinking, which in fact, the irony about it is that when we don our lipstick to go out and score at the job interview, it's not, I mean, what we are doing is like we glamorize ourselves. So but it's an act that's totally culturally consecrated, and it's almost expected, that you show up as your better self, and then you go and sell, you strut your stuff, and then here I come, now give me the goddamn job, right? So, I mean, what has this got to do with you being authentic? Sometimes I can so laugh at just the very idea. It's preposterous, right? So, so the whole purpose of magic is to, in fact, also knock some of these myths off, and then give us access to what stares us in the face. Yeah. And I find they work with the cards for magical rituals as performing beautifully, in that sense, because you don't sit with any kind of dictations. You don't sit with any kind of even your own expectations that, oh, if I conjure Andromalis, then yeah, and there is something with a snake, and there is something. You already have an image that was described by somebody else in some grimoire that are very suspect. How they all came about, who wrote them, we don't even know. So it's like, okay, so why should I have that particular image in my head? Maybe I can look at something else. Then I put down 3 cards and then I see what's going on. Sometimes, interestingly enough, and actually that is what some of the stories I tell in my forthcoming book here. Actually, next month I'm going to release it. The Andromalius book, is that on occasion, and I get a kick out of it, it's like when I do the ritual with the cards, I see that they entirely support the grimoires. And I'm like, oh, no shit, so there's something with the snake. I told a very nice story there. And then I get the cards where I have lots of snakes on it, and I'm like, wow, okay. The snake is here, so but again, the beauty of it is that I wasn't just blindly following a random script, I was also participating in co-creation. I was looking at the stuff myself, my own cards, I custom, and then I try to put 2 and 2 together and see what I get, and then of course, if I can see that there is a match, then, well, more power to us, myself and whatever demon. And if there isn't, then I don't get to bog down and say, oh, that failed. I mean, that's a lousy magician. So so the purpose with doing magical rituals with magic, with cards, is simply to just have access to seeing the obvious. Have access to that which enables you to pay more attention than you'd otherwise do. So that's what I say.
Yeah. And like, how do you create a talisman out of that as well? Because you can kind of perform it, right? You get that message, and then you can create like a special talisman as well that can be quite potent. And how do they work? The potency of the talismans. Why?
Well, the talisman. I mean, the idea of a talisman originally, I don't know. The word talisman is an Arabic word, and it's actually it means violence. You inflict violence, because you draw down the power of the stars and the planets. So both fix the stars on the planets, So you draw that, and the idea is you draw down the power, and when you do that, I mean, you do it by force, so the old Arabs, the Arabs of old, they like to think in sympathetic terms, and they say, okay, some gemstones, some herbs, they have a sympathetic relation with these stars, and then we can just, we can draw the power of Mars, for instance, down into a, some solid iron or something, or you can use gemstones, you can use carnelian, you can use whatever, so there are also lots of stories about which goes with what, so you'll find endless lists of correspondences. So the whole idea of a talisman is to create something that can capture, by force, by the magician's force, that can capture another kind of energy or force that is not in your immediate range, if you like. So by the same token, so of course now, I mean, when I create a talisman, I don't always inscribe sigils star sigils or whatever on the appropriate stones. That would be the traditional way of doing it. Uh, but I like to I'm a paper fetishist. Did I mention that? I think I did. So I like to scribble
Yeah,
something in my
this one from your
yeah,
from
for
yeah,
instance.
yeah.
Yeah, for instance, so you create something that is aesthetically pleasing, or you can be more free. And if it's a hand, if it's a calligraphy, so then you can think about inks. What kind of inks? What are they made of? Like I have a very beautiful ink that's full of hematite, and also iron and red, so and diamond dust, sometimes I also work with a lot of dust, so it's like often, and paper and dust, they go together. So now see, this is an original idea. I haven't seen anybody else doing it, so you can have it for free. So when you start thinking common sensingly about the the um, uh, the duration. I mean, some say a paper talisman doesn't last as long as a stone. I mean, obviously. So therefore, back in the days, they say, well, can you put it on a diamond? Because, that's going to last forever. That's also a myth, but let's go with it. So you inscribe the stuff on a stone because that has better durability. Now, however, when you talk about how you can infuse something, with something that will just stay. So I thought, well, what is better than dust? you know like, I mean, just look at your own home. You're never going to get rid of your dust, no matter how much vacuum cleaning you do or hoovering you do. Dust is there to stay. So once it dawned on me that, I thought, so my talismans get to be very potent, even though they are inscribed with inks on paper that's perishable, or as long as the dust is there. And then I use diamond dust, or I use some other kind of, I use dust here from this beautiful magical big North Sea in the Atlantic that I live by. um, so there you have it. So keep it simple. So it can be very, very, very simple. There is never any kind of elaboration beyond just thinking of the idea, and what is that makes sense, or even if you want to bypass the prescription that something has to be durable and then it has to be represented by that appropriate material. And then you can only go down and say, I'm not rich and I don't have access to the goddamn polished diamonds, by some nice Jewish polishers, I mean, who can do the all 57 facets and I don't know what else, so I wish. You know what I mean? So what do you do? So you have to think about something else. So then you can come up with some of these notions, that upon just a little bit of reflection again on what stares you in the face, like what is obvious. And it's right there. Or else, you cast the cards for it, and then you can see, what do the cards suggest? Are we there with the waters? Are we there with a solid landscape? Are we there with trees? Are we there with iron blades? Are we there? So that's what I use the cards for. So, and then and in my own case, I prefer the calligraphic aspect because it goes quick, and it's like I don't think, I don't sit and think, or I sit and think a lot before. Because I can help it, so I'm the kind of like, but I always have a trillion of ideas going through my head, so I think a lot about it. But once I sit down to do it, and as like when I open that space or I start shuffling the cards, I just tapping of the cards. I have the stick, I shuffle the cards and then I tap them on the table, a couple of times, and it's almost like I know exactly when I'm ready to cast them. So some would say, oh yeah, that one, she believes in so many superstitions. Like every time I have an occasion to name it, I name it. I believe nothing. I am a Marxist and I'm a Zen inclined person. So so I don't have any beliefs, zero. But there is such a thing that we associate with readiness, with a sense of timing and momentum. And what I like about working with the cards is that they give us some kind of quick insight into the meaning of that, meaning inverted commas, right? Or yeah, like you can suddenly have an insight and say, now I'm ready for whatever, or now the time is right. Now the time is right to do this or that. Yeah. So that's the basis that goes, into, or the basic premise or principle, if you like, that goes into my general talismanic craftsmanship, or whatever. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question as such, but
No, yeah, no, totally, yeah, and I mean, I got a lot out of your book. So, like, you give examples in the book, so people kind of want more, because we
look
kind of
at all
hear.
those stickers you have.
Well, yeah, that's how I read. Look, and it's also highlighted like pretty much like.
Whoa,
That's how I read.
how
Yeah.
nice. Oh,
I
that's
used to scribble in the books, but now I'm kind of more scribble in my journal, but I highlight everything and I like, yeah, and it's like those ones are what I need to remember in terms of teachings, and those ones are practical examples and ideas I can do. There is
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to say about it. Yes, and one is never quite finished with it, So yeah, but thank you for that dedication. Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed.
I'm very excited about your new upcoming book, but we'll probably end it because I know that, like, yeah, we kind of we went a little bit over time as well. So yeah, but thank you so much again for your time and for sharing your knowledge and your beautiful, like, really unique depths that only you have. And yeah, so Camilla, all of your links will be below the Radio
Thank you
Academy
so much.
website and everything. So it's all there included for people, including your Amazon page, where yeah, people can check out your books. Yeah.
Yeah. iCorner Press will list all of them, and then the special ones, because the special editions, the limited editions, they are not on Amazon. So
No, yeah, because this one is just such a pleasure. Like, I mean, I finished it as well. And
yeah,
it's
exactly. That's
really special because you shared like a lot of your personal stories in this one. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those type of books, in the Silk edition, they are not available on Amazon. So you have to go to
but you see, like, my tabs are transparent. So yeah, you can see what, like, it's beautifully gilded because I need it because
yeah.
that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm glad to see what you're doing with my books. Yeah, that in itself, so it's like a continuation of that talismanic power that I try to learn, especially this kind of productions, So yeah. Thank you so much, Masha. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you to the audience. I don't know how many are still around.
Yeah, well, we still have 18 people around. So everyone who joined us, and yeah, and of course, thank you to those people who will be watching back, because we'll have people watching back, of course, who couldn't make it live. And yeah, no, I'm so very grateful for your time and for all your teachings and everything you do and share with us. And yeah, I look forward to the playing card course with band, using your book, one of your trilogy books, right? And then yeah, and absolutely, we will be on the lookout for the upcoming masterclass for the
stay tuned for that. It should be fun. I mean, I hope.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And yeah, everyone, wherever you are, have a good morning, afternoon. It's almost midnight for me. So
yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for your, it's fun for me to share all of these things. And I don't know how much sense I can make. But
I had lots of fun. So yeah.
There is always tomorrow if we're still around. If I don't make sense today, maybe tomorrow I can do better. Meanwhile, all power to you all. Keep going, as I like to put it, and make some art, study, read, and get those beautiful decks. If you can come near them, I would say they're worth the investment. At least all the ones I have, I cherish all of them. So even the ones that I don't like so much. Or the ones that I think are the result of sloppy thinking or whatever, I still like them because, when I get the deck, then I do it because it has something extra. So Okay, so thank you for your presence, and thank you, Masha, for putting this channel. The whole channel is beautiful work you're doing, and
Oh, thank
yeah,
you. Just sharing what I love. So
yeah.
that's kind of my way to stay connected. Yeah.
All
So
right.
thank you so much. Yeah, bye everyone.
So,
We'll
bye, everyone.
bye.